Imagine a city where everything works perfectly. Streets flow like a symphony. Buildings serve both function and beauty, and technology solves every problem. It's an ideal that has inspired planners, architects, and governments for centuries. A place where society's most pressing challenges can be solved simply by design. But time and time again, history has shown that utopias are fragile. When ambition clashes with economics, culture, and human nature, the dream can quickly unravel. From desert metropolises designed to be green paradises to meticulously plotted capitals in the center of South America, these cities remind us that even the most carefully planned dreams can fall apart when confronted with the unpredictability of people and time. Masdar City, UAE. In 2006, the United Arab Emirates announced plans for Masdar City, a project that promised to redefine urban living. The goal was to build the world's first carbon-neutral zero-waste city powered entirely by renewable energy, where technology and sustainability worked seamlessly to create a modern utopia. Funded by Abu Dhabi's oil wealth, Masdar City was a global statement. The vision included pedestrian-friendly streets, high-tech homes, renewable energy infrastructure, and a transportation system designed to eliminate emissions entirely. For a country known for vast deserts and extreme heat, Masdar represented a daring gamble. Could humans build a technologically advanced city that harmonized with nature in one of the harshest environments on Earth? Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan described Masdar as a model for future cities worldwide. The goal was to create a city where people could live, work, and innovate in total harmony with the environment. Every element was meticulously planned, from the alignment of streets to reduce wind and heat exposure, to the integration of solar and wind energy at every level. The ambition was symbolic, as Masdar was intended to become a beacon of progress, showing the world that sustainability could be beautiful, efficient, and high-tech. The city's layout was revolutionary. It was compact, designed to minimize walking distances while maximizing shaded areas. Buildings would incorporate passive cooling systems to reduce energy use, and photovoltaic panels would harness the relentless desert sun. Automated electric pods were to replace conventional cars, while narrow pedestrian streets encouraged walking and biking. Masdar's planners enlisted some of the world's top architects and urban designers to bring this vision to life. Streets curved and twisted in response to the sun's trajectory, minimizing exposure and maximizing comfort. Public spaces were designed to encourage interaction, yet remain private enough for families and small communities. The city's heart was a research and innovation hub, meant to attract scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs from across the globe. The project also included ambitious technological innovations. Smart grids were designed to monitor and optimize energy consumption in real time. Waste recycling systems would ensure that nothing left the city without being repurposed. Even the water system relied on sustainable methods, using advanced filtration and distribution to minimize waste. The design was futuristic to the point of science fiction, but grounded in the belief that the right planning and technology could make utopia possible. Despite its promise, Masdar City quickly ran into serious problems. First, the cost of building such a technologically advanced city in a desert was astronomical. Every innovation required massive investment, and delays quickly mounted. The global financial crisis of 2008 further strained the project, forcing planners to scale back or postpone many elements. Beyond economics, the city struggled to attract residents. Masdar felt sterile. Its streets, while meticulously designed, lacked the organic chaos of a lived-in city. Cafes, markets, and casual social spaces were sparse. People didn't want to live somewhere that felt more like a research facility than a home. Even the transportation system faltered. Automated pods, once touted as a game changer, proved costly and difficult to implement at scale. Some streets remained empty, while private car ownership, ironically, became necessary for many who worked in the city. The technology that was supposed to create a utopia ended up isolating residents further. There were also cultural and climatic challenges. The city was designed for a generic global citizen rather than considering the local social and cultural context. The intense desert heat, combined with the wide streets and open spaces, made walking uncomfortable, undermining the pedestrian-focused design. The original vision clashed with practical human behavior. However, only a fraction of the planned buildings have been completed, and the population remains tiny. The city functions primarily as a research and business hub rather than a thriving residential metropolis. Its innovations in energy and urban planning are studied worldwide, but the city's human aspect remains underdeveloped. Brasilia, Brazil. Half a world away, in the heart of South America, another ambitious city was taking shape. In 1960, Brazil inaugurated Brasilia, designed to be the country's new capital. The goal was political as much as architectural. Move the center of power from Rio de Janeiro to the interior, demonstrate Brazil's modernization, and create a city that symbolized progress and national pride. Brasilia was envisioned as a city where architecture, planning, and society harmonized perfectly. It would eliminate the congestion, chaos, and inefficiencies of older cities while showcasing the potential of modernist design. President Juscelino Kubitschek, who championed the project, famously declared that Brasilia would make Brazil a land of the future. The masterminds behind Brasilia were Oscar Niemeyer, a visionary architect known for bold sculptural buildings, and Lucio Costa, an urban planner with a passion for geometrical perfection. Together, they laid out a city like no other. dividing it into functional zones: the monumental axis for government buildings, the residential axis for housing, and separate areas for commerce, culture, and recreation. Roads were wide, straight, and meticulously planned, while the city's layout resembled the shape of an airplane or a bird from above. Brasilia's buildings were striking. Niemeyer's curvilinear designs contrasted sharply with Costa's rigid urban grid. Civic spaces were monumental, meant to impress and inspire. Residential blocks were identical and uniform, reflecting the modernist idea that order, rationality, and geometry could solve social problems. The city was built to be seen, photographed, and admired. The problem with Brasilia was its very perfection. While visually stunning, the city's rigid planning ignored human social behavior. By separating housing, work, and leisure zones, the design forced residents to travel long distances for even the simplest errands. The monumental roads, designed for efficiency, created barriers rather than connections, discouraging spontaneous interactions. The uniform residential blocks, while orderly, felt impersonal. Neighborhoods lacked identity, and the sense of community was weak. Social inequality and segregation, which the planners hoped to avoid, quietly emerged. Middle and upper-class residents had cars and access to amenities, while lower-income workers often had to commute from informal settlements outside the city. Moreover, the city's architecture, though celebrated internationally, was impractical for everyday life. Open plazas became empty, echoing spaces that were beautiful but cold. Climate considerations were overlooked in some areas, making certain outdoor spaces uncomfortable in the tropical heat. Essentially, Brasilia's perfection created alienation, highlighting the dangers of planning for aesthetics over lived experience. Today, Brasilia is a functioning capital with over 3 million residents, yet its utopian promise remains elusive. It hosts government institutions, tourists, and business centers, but the daily life of ordinary citizens tells a different story. Traffic congestion, social segregation, and a lack of neighborhood cohesion persist. The city's visually remarkable, but the human experience remains constrained by its rigid design. Brasilia teaches us that functionality cannot be sacrificed for symbolism. A city may inspire awe, but if it doesn't accommodate the unpredictable, nuanced needs of its people, it risks becoming a museum rather than a throne. At this point, both Masdar City and Brasilia illustrate the same fundamental lesson. Utopias often fail because they underestimate the human element. Ambitious planning, cutting-edge technology, and breathtaking architecture cannot substitute for social interaction, organic growth, and adaptability. People are not programmable. They resist perfection when it feels alien, impractical, or lonely. Masdar shows the pitfalls of building for ideals rather than residents. Brasilia demonstrates the consequences of prioritizing order and aesthetics over lived experience. In both cases, the dream was beautiful, but incomplete. The beauty of utopia remains irresistible, yet these cities remind us of a harsh truth. Perfect cities may exist in theory, but the messy, unpredictable reality of human life will always find a way to challenge the most meticulously planned visions. Chandigarh, India. In the aftermath of India's independence in 1947, the country faced a symbolic and practical challenge. It needed a new capital for the state of Punjab, as Lahore had become part of Pakistan. Enter Chandigarh, envisioned as a symbol of India's future, a city that would embody modernity, progress, efficiency, while breaking with colonial urban design. India's leaders wanted Chandigarh to represent rational planning, democracy, and optimism. The idea was to create a city that reflected a new independent India, distinct from its past yet forward-looking architecture, infrastructure, and civic organization. Every street, park, and public space was intended to reflect harmony, order, and efficiency. To bring this vision to life, the Indian government hired Le Corbusier, the Swiss-French architect famous for his bold modernist designs and utopian ideals. His reputation for innovative city planning and geometric precision made him the ideal candidate for a project that demanded perfection. Chandigarh was designed around a grid of sectors, each self-contained and equipped with schools, markets, parks, and housing. The city's layout resembled a geometrically perfect pattern, prioritizing accessibility, symmetry, and efficiency. Wide boulevards, green belts, and monumental buildings like the Secretariat, High Court, and Legislative Assembly emphasized order and rationality. Le Corbusier's philosophy was deeply embedded in the city. He believed in the separation of work, leisure, and residence. Roads were designed for speed and clarity, residential areas were organized hierarchically, and public spaces reflected an almost sculptural approach to urban form. Chandigarh was a living manifesto to modernist architecture, a city intended to teach citizens how to live in harmony with rational design. While Chandigarh was lauded internationally for its beauty and modernist vision, the city's rigid planning soon revealed cracks. The sector-based layout, while efficient on paper, created social fragmentation. People rarely interacted across sectors, leading to isolated micro-communities rather than a cohesive urban society. The very precision that made the city beautiful also made it impersonal and intimidating. Le Corbusier's design assumed rational behavior from residents, yet people are far more unpredictable. Local cultural practices, informal markets, and spontaneous gatherings were not adequately accounted for, leaving some parts of the city feeling sterile or underutilized. The monumental architecture, meant to inspire civic pride, sometimes alienated residents instead, creating spaces that were awe-inspiring but emotionally cold. Another challenge was rapid population growth. Chandigarh was built for tens of thousands, but the city's population exploded over the decades. The modernist infrastructure, designed for a smaller, more orderly population, struggled to accommodate the influx, leading to congestion, strain on utilities, and the rise of informal settlements on the periphery. Today, Chandigarh is considered a success story in some respects due to its cleanliness, green spaces, and organized layout. Yet the utopian ideal of a perfectly rational, socially harmonious city remains unfulfilled. Many residents appreciate the order and aesthetic, but others feel the city lacks warmth and organic community life. Chandigarh serves as a powerful lesson. Order and beauty cannot replace social vibrancy. Even the most meticulously planned city can feel alienating if it neglects the spontaneous emotional and cultural aspects of human life. Celebration Florida. In 1994, the Walt Disney Company launched a project that seemed almost whimsical in its ambition. Celebration Florida. Unlike Chandigarh or Brasilia, Celebration was a private, corporate-built utopia, a town where Disney's ideals of community, charm, and perfection would be translated into real life. Disney imagined a town free from the chaos, unpredictability, and urban decay that plagued most American suburbs. Streets would be lined with white picket fences, manicured lawns, and walkable neighborhoods. Town squares, schools, and shops would foster a sense of togetherness and civic pride. Residents would live in a storybook environment, insulated from the inconveniences of modern life. Celebration was part urban planning, part marketing, and part social experiment. Disney wanted to create a living advertisement for its ideals, a town so perfect that it would become a model for suburban living across the United States. The town's layout prioritized walkability, aesthetics, and nostalgia. Streets followed a classical grid with pedestrian-friendly sidewalks and hidden cul-de-sacs to reduce traffic. Homes followed strict architectural guidelines. Exteriors had to maintain traditional styles, paint colors were regulated, and even landscaping was controlled to maintain visual harmony. Public spaces were designed to encourage interaction. Town squares hosted community events, while parks provided recreation. Schools, libraries, and small businesses were woven into the fabric of the town, aiming to create a self-contained community where residents could live, work, and socialize without ever leaving the carefully curated environment. The town also leveraged modern technology discreetly. Underground utilities, controlled traffic flow, and safety measures were intended to create a seamless experience. Meanwhile, Disney was building an idealized lifestyle. However, Celebration's problems were visible. First, it suffered from the limits of top-down planning. While aesthetically perfect, the town often felt artificial to residents. The strict architectural codes, landscaping rules, and social expectations created pressure rather than comfort. Not everyone wanted to live in a controlled environment where personal expression was restricted. Moreover, the town faced typical suburban challenges that Disney had underestimated. Traffic patterns, commuting needs, and social diversity created friction in a community designed for uniformity. Some critics described Celebration as a curated Disney set, but lacking the unpredictability and authenticity that made communities feel alive. The town's corporate origin also created social dynamics unusual for traditional city. Residents were aware that they were part of a brand-driven experiment, which sometimes undermined the sense of true community ownership. The town's controlled environment limited organic cultural expression, making it feel charming but ultimately constrained. Today, Celebration is inhabited, functional, and visually stunning, but its utopian promise remains partially unfulfilled. Residents enjoy safety, aesthetics, and amenities, but the town's design cannot fully recreate the warmth, spontaneity, or diversity of organically grown communities. Ultimately, Masdar City and Brasilia taught us that rigid modernist designs and technological ambition can fail when they ignore social realities. Chandigarh and Celebration extend that lesson into different contexts. Cultural assumptions and corporate visions cannot substitute for the organic, messy human side of urban life. Chandigarh's clean grids and monumental architecture alienated residents, while Celebration's curated streets and strict codes limited spontaneity and authenticity. Both show that utopian ideals often collide with human unpredictability, whether in culture, behavior, or social interaction. Across continents, climates, and contexts, these four cities share a common story. Ambition, technology, and design cannot replace lived human experience. The lesson is timeless. A city is more than its buildings, roads, or infrastructure. It's a living ecosystem of human interactions, emotions, and culture. Utopias fail not because their planners lacked vision, but because they underestimated the one variable that cannot be controlled: people. And yet, there is beauty in failure. These cities remain sources of inspiration, study, and fascination. They remind us that dreaming big is necessary, but that dreaming without grounding in reality can turn visions of perfection into lessons in imperfection. The utopian impulse will always drive architects, planners, and dreamers, but the stories of Masdar, Brasilia, Chandigarh, and Celebration remind us that humanity is never something you can fully design.